Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining our session today. My name is Alex Souza from LevelBlue. I'm our lead marketing manager for the network security portfolio here at LevelBlue, and I'm excited to be here with Kristen Perot from LevelBlue as well. And then we're also joined with Paul Welford from Checkpoint. I'm going to give them a second to introduce themselves. Kristen, let's start with you.
Thanks, Alex. I'm Kristen Perot. I work with our SOC here. I'm the lead threat hunter for our SentinelOne platform, typically customer facing. I started here almost 5 years ago as an analyst and I've gotten here so far. Yeah, thank you.
And Paul?
Absolutely, yeah, appreciate it, Alex, Kristen. So Paul Welford here, email security engineer with Checkpoint. I started originally with a solution called Avanon, and which was acquired by Checkpoint, which Alex and team will get into it here in just a bit. But previous to that, did some Microsoft consulting, and then before that, was also at another email security solution. So I got a heavy background in this email security space, and then also the Microsoft ecosystems as well as Google Workspace.
Thank you, Paul and Kristen. So yeah, together we're going to be exploring how LevelBlue, as a managed security service provider, or MSSP, leverages Checkpoint's awesome technology to help organizations stay ahead of the evolving email threat landscape. Despite significant advancements made in cybersecurity, email just continues to be a primary target for attackers. Email, being external, it's something easy for attackers to both reach and hit, right? Business email compromise, phishing, growing challenges around compliance make this just a crucial topic for organizations of all sizes. Today, we're going to kind of cover the current email threat landscape and why companies struggle with email security, specific threats and trends that we're seeing at the LevelBlue Security Operations Center, or SOC. And Paul will dive into how Checkpoint's technology addresses these threats. Lastly, I'll return to discuss why partnering with an MSSP like LevelBlue is critical to ensure your organization remains both protected and compliant. And I don't want to promise, but we should have enough time to do some live Q&A here at the end. So let's start by painting a picture of today's email threat landscape. Phishing continues to be one of the most dominant cyber attack vectors. In 2023, we saw a 58% increase in phishing attacks from the previous year, which was already a sharp rise from the year before. And you can see here, the finance vertical was particularly hard hit in 2022, with a 393% increase in attacks. And according to the FBI, the average cost per incident has doubled since 2019. And business email compromise, or BEC attacks, have cost nearly $3 billion. And that's in 2023 alone, in only one type of attack, right? It's just a huge trend that we're seeing, and it's expected to continue. Another concerning trend is the rise of AI-driven phishing kits, which allow cyber criminals to bypass multi-factor authentication and craft highly targeted, personalized attacks. And these threats are evolving rapidly, and it's becoming increasingly difficult for organizations to stay ahead without the right tools in place. Kristen, can you tell us more about some of these attacks and what you're seeing in the SOC?
Yeah, absolutely. With our numbers and everything, we've seen about 59% in the last year, but just refreshing this morning, we're actually at 65% for all of the incidents we've seen this year being business email compromise based. A lot of these contain, phishing attacks. We've seen a lot of social engineering. With the social engineering aspect, AI is also playing a big part. Like Alex said, you can get voicemails that are automated by, just saying, hey, we need you to log into this account, or we're seeing this on your account, or please, do this and that. And we're seeing a lot of, with the phishing emails, embedded images with, potentially malicious links. We've caught a lot in that regard as well. Ransomware is a big component too, and a lot of the time the root cause is a phishing attack. With that in general, we've seen our SOC has created a lot of really good investigations overall. It can be as little as even just the changing of an inbox or creating a new rule, they're able to catch things like that and go from there and just say, hey, this doesn't look good. But yeah, overall, we've seen just this skyrocket. This has been a really big issue. And luckily, we have a really good team that's been able to progress all of our rules and everything like that and get better at catching these type of things. But yeah, the threat landscape is massive for this right now. And it's crazy to see such a big takeover of kind of one section in an entire SOC that we're seeing, right? Like, we usually see so many different things, but this has just become such a major issue that is taking up a lot of our time. But it's luckily given us a lot of opportunity to be more advanced with it as well.
Okay, yeah, and like you kind of touched on, platforms like OneDrive, SharePoint, Microsoft Office 365, Google Workspace are just frequently targeted, right? And organizations need those tools to maintain visibility across their ecosystem and productivity as well. But with that amount of tools, it becomes kind of harder and harder to plug gaps or holes in the wall, right?
Yeah.
Like Kristen mentioned, BEC is getting just so big. And since 2013, you can see on the slide here, 50 billion in global losses. That's just an incredible amount of money, not to mention the amount of time that a lot of businesses have lost as well. We talked about some external attacks a lot. Thank you, Kristen. But the challenges around email security aren't just limited to those external threats. Many organizations we're seeing struggle with the complexity of their own ecosystems, like I touched on with 365 and Workspace. Managing just a wide range of tools, email platforms, and then regulatory requirements. The rapid adoption of cloud services, like I said earlier, it's necessary, but it's leaving so many blind spots. And in addition to technical challenges, the regulatory landscape is becoming much more stringent. The SEC's new cybersecurity risk management rules and CISA's reporting requirements are pushing organizations like never before to strengthen their defenses. And for many mid-market companies and smaller businesses, these regulations can be difficult to navigate without the right expertise, right? Other regulations such as HIPAA and PCI come into play depending on what industry you're in. There's just a ton of rules and laws to be aware of, and it's difficult to figure out how to conform to each of these standards. It's even harder sometimes to set up a new security environment that will provide your organization with both the security it needs and, will meet the requirements of the SEC, CISA, and the like. But that's where we come in at LevelBlue. So at LevelBlue, we work really closely with organizations to deploy and manage email security solutions that address today's complex threats. Our services include that expert deployment of Checkpoint's technology, which meets just all of these needs, as well as continuous 24/7 monitoring, management, and incident response. And we can tailor our approach to meet your specific business and compliance needs, whatever they are. It might be through customer reporting or generating audit-ready logs. We can even mix and match technology to create defenses that go beyond email. And in addition to that technology, we also focus on training your employees to recognize those phishing attempts and other social engineering tactics, because half the battle is your employee noticing that something's wrong. So there's a problem with that email or message. Partnering with an MSSP like LevelBlue ensures that your email security is always up to date and aligned with the latest threat intelligence, like things that we see in our SOC, and really just frees up your internal teams to focus on other strategic priorities. I'll say it again, you can focus on your business while we worry about the deployment, the configuration, and the management of your security. And speaking of that security, I'm going to hand this over to Paul to talk about how this awesome email security technology works.
Yeah, appreciate it, Alex. So we think of email security and kind of where email security started, kind of the evolution of it and where it's landed today and what the future looks like. Email security is still kind of in its infancy. It really didn't change. The first email for that, kind of put things in perspective. The first email was really sent back in 1971. It was kind of it's like a side project for a guy over at MIT. And just put that, your side project creates the most advanced way that businesses communicate in the 21st century. I mean, it's mind-boggling to think about. And from there, email evolved, businesses were adapting it, things were changing, but security really kind of forgot about email, but hackers did not. And really from 71 to probably the best I could find, probably the early 2000s is when you really started seeing email security solutions start popping up. And they were called gateways, right? So they lived outside the cloud, which was great because back then the cloud really didn't exist. Everything lived in an office, it lived in a closet, that exchange server there, if you will. So it really made secure email gateways kind of the go-to from an email security standpoint, right? Where you're looking at a message coming in, hits the gateway filters that message, make sure it's clean, and then hands it off to your local exchange solution, and then business as usual from there, right? So if you think about that as an on-prem approach, that's great. But when the world moves from really that, what I like to call that 2D approach to email to what we are today is a 3D approach where we started migrating everything to the cloud, you really need a more advanced approach. And that's where Checkpoint came to market in 2016-ish. So if you think about it again, 71 emails sent, early 2000s, email security became gateways. 2008 is kind of where 365 launched. Or Microsoft, I should say, launched the cloud platform for Exchange, and then Google Workspace started popping up, and nothing changed. The email security world didn't really follow with that. And the gateways kind of came up with some cool stuff right there, right? Impersonation protection, which helped really with the business email compromises that, Kristen and Alex have been talking about. And then the ransomware, the malware, they were doing the impersonation attack protections, the URL rewriting. So they did some cool stuff. But as things were moving to the cloud, we started needing this 3D approach that I like to call it, because now we think about 365. It's not just mail going inbound and outbound. You got mail, you got OneDrive, you got SharePoint, you got Teams, Box, Dropbox, Slack, Google Drive, all of these different tools plugged into what your email security, so your email world is doing today. So you need that more advanced approach, and you need something baked directly into the cloud to have that 3D approach. And the reason I ultimately like to call what we do a 3D approach is because we're able to do inbound, outbound, and user-to-user communication filtering. So that is internal communication. We talk about those gateways that sit outside the cloud. They're really not able to really hit on that internal filtering approach there. And then also missing those aspects of OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams. All right, and what we like to call what Harmony Email Collaboration is today is an API-based email security solution. So the cool thing about what we do is we plug directly into your cloud. We can protect multiple aspects of the email security environment, and we actually kind of have a bit of what I like to call a marriage from an email security approach with the Google Workspace and the 365 environment. And going beyond just what we're doing with filtering for phishing and malware and spam, doing the impersonation protection, right? Doing the threat extraction approach, where we're looking for those more sophisticated zero-day attacks, those attacks that can sneak around some of those other solutions that are sitting outside the cloud there. One of the cool things also that we do is also having that centralized approach to DLP as well. We were talking about some of the sides of the compliance world, so we didn't forget about the compliance side. I was like to say security and compliance go hand in hand whenever we're talking about keeping a secure ecosystem. So fully baked DLP solution that also has an encryption tool associated with it as well. So kind of breezing over some things here as well. So if any questions pop up, please do not hesitate to toss those into the Q&A there. But kind of advancing from kind of our architecture, where we sit and how we're protecting these ecosystems today from a 3D standpoint is kind of taking a peek at the dashboard and really what LevelBlue team has at their fingertips whenever they install this solution into your environment, and they're ensuring you're keeping a clean email ecosystem. So as I mentioned earlier, we're doing the phishing, the malware, the impersonation protection, business email compromise, even shadow IT. But there's also that anomaly detection approach. Going back to kind of that limitation of what gateways are able to see because they're sitting outside the cloud, with us being plugged directly in the cloud. What about your user login processes? So that's something else we're able to monitor outside of just that inbound, outbound, and user-to-user communication approach inside the cloud. But with the anomaly detection engine, watching this logins, looking for those bulk forwarding rules, bulk delete rules, right? Bulk move rules, unusual logins. A lot of people like to call them Superman events. Your user, we're seeing that day-to-day activity, users logging in from, we'll say state of Florida on a regular basis, log in from Florida. Then all of a sudden today, Sally gets in, she logs in, She's down in Miami, that's where she lives, but then all of a sudden, 2 minutes later, we see a random login to her mailbox, in Cuba, right? That's unusual activity. Yes, Cuba's close to Miami, but not 2 minutes away. So we're looking at that approach there, so we can block access, force password resets, feeding information over to the SOC team so that they can easily mitigate these things or investigate where it may have come from. So really looking at a full, complete approach to protecting your email ecosystem on a day-to-day basis there. And on the side of really talking about proof of concepts and really how to test an email solution, beyond the fact that we can sit here and talk all day long about efficacy rates. But one of the beautiful things that we can do, and when we're working with the LevelBlue team, is we can plug directly into your 365 ecosystem and not take down mail. So we can silently plug into your environment via LevelBlue team and some of their managed services architects, plug directly into your 365 or Google Workspace Cloud and run in a silent mode. So if you have a current email solution sitting out on the edge, or even utilizing the internal security that Microsoft and Google provide, we can see the things that they miss. So plug us in, we'll sit there silently, we'll see the phishing, the malware, the impersonation attacks, the malicious URLs that those other solutions are missing, and show you the things that we are picking up. And we actually consolidate all that information into what we call an executive summary, which I'll show you here at the end. And whenever you're running your proof of concepts with the LevelBlue team, this is something you can provide to kind of review and see, make that intelligent decision, I like to say, with removing your current email solution and plugging in something like Harmony Email Collaboration to have that more advanced approach on a day-to-day basis for email security there. So going kind of the next slide, we're doing a little bit of a double click on really the aspects of what we look at. So we talked about phishing, we talked about malware, but what do we utilize behind the scenes to ensure that we are really keeping a clean ecosystem? So behind all of the solutions that Checkpoint brings to the table, we have what we call Threat Cloud. And inside Threat Cloud, 70 different AI and machine learning engines, kind of a combination of both. But what that allows us to do is essentially Checkpoint's firewall solutions, their mobile device management, whatever, all the signatures that they see from a malicious standpoint are dumped into this Threat Cloud environment. And HEC is actually also plugged into this environment. So we're able to use that intelligence when we're making decisions on whether something is phishing, whether something is malware, or it's a no or an unknown malicious link from an email security standpoint. But what if the firewall saw it? What if the mobile device management protection? What if those other tools that see it that we bring to the table today? What if those other tools saw it? We can take those signatures and that intelligence and apply it during the scanning processes to make sure that we see those more sophisticated attacks, those zero-day attacks that these hackers are trying to utilize from an email security standpoint. So when you're talking about phishing, today we use a little over 300 plus indicators to decide whether a message is actually phishing or not. So we're hunting for those credential harvesting attacks. And when it comes to links, we don't stop at just the URLs, we look at QR codes. So QR code rewriting. The QR codes kind of went silent for a little bit. Hackers weren't utilizing it, but recently they popped back up and everybody wants to use a QR code and a link hidden behind a QR code to have some sort of malicious destination. We're testing those and making sure that that's not hitting your end users' inboxes and they're having a safe ecosystem there. And one other thing you'll see from the screenshot here of what it means to whenever we're deciding a malicious, if a malicious email is there, is that sender reputation, right? So that's something we take into consideration too. So the person sending the message to your environment, what's the age of that domain? Has your organization ever communicated with that domain before? Have your internal users ever at any point communicated with that with the sender of that malicious message or message in general, right? So we're able to take that intelligence and combine it into those day-to-day scanning processes and ensure we're blocking those things. So kind of harped on that whole silent mode, right? We're sitting in the detect mode, showing that proof of value during that proof of concept and making sure you guys are understanding what we're doing. But then we move into that more of that protection approach, right? So blocking those messages from entering into the user's ecosystems, sending out those daily digests so users will see, hey, we quarantine these things. Hey, these things were labeled as spam, right? So we're able to provide that full protection from proof of value to, the end of your life cycle, hopefully never, right? Keeping HEC plugged in and keeping a clean ecosystem for the life of your organization there. So as I mentioned earlier, looking at kind of that I don't want to call to action really, but what it means to have us plugged in and then see the data, right, and putting it into an executive summary. And this is what it could be, right? So every solution, or not every solution, excuse me. So every time we plug into an organization, we're running in that silent mode, and even post proof of concept, proof of value, you can run these security checkup reports, or as I like to call them, almost like an executive summary. And via this executive summary, you'll get extensive details. So the phishing messages we would stop, the gray mail that we would move to specific places if you wanted to create it and keep more of a day-to-day operation, like day-to-day operation smooth for end users. Because if you think about phishing and malware, we want to stop those. But then there's gray mail and spam. Those are more noise, right? So managing spam, keeping spam in the junk folder, gray mail, things you signed up for. Don't necessarily want it in the inbox, right? But we want it in a separate place to maybe pop over there and see the notifications and the updates maybe from LevelBlue, because I want to see those, but I want to make sure I know where they're at and they're not convoluting my day-to-day operations there. So whenever you're running through that proof of concept with the LevelBlue team, they'll provide this executive summary for you guys, review it, show you what we can do whenever we're protecting that environment on a day-to-day basis, and then kind of go from there. So Alex, I'll pass it back to you, man, unless there was anything else you wanted me to touch on.
Yeah, no, thank you, Paul. That was great. It really speaks to the depth of data and security that we can offer here at LevelBlue, working with Checkpoint. We have a huge amount of threat intelligence. Kristen mentioned it. Everything that we're seeing in our SOC, we're able to feed that back into Checkpoint's data to just cross-reference with each other, just to provide such a detailed manifest of what's kind of going in and on inside of your email servers, right? And kind of, the role of managed services has never really been more critical, as, email remains just a top target. And it's essential that organizations have that real-time monitoring and the ability to respond to incidents quickly. And, we at LevelBlue, we provide that. We provide that ongoing management, ensuring your email security stays ahead of evolving threats, like Paul talked about. People are suddenly jumping on the QR code bandwagon when they've been quiet for a little bit. And, we're aware of that with our threat intelligence, and we work with Checkpoint to just keep you updated and protected. That advanced security that organizations need in this evolving threat landscape, working with Checkpoint, like I said, we provide that to you. And by partnering with an MSSP like us, you also reduce the burden on your internal teams while ensuring those updates, policy creation, and proactive incident management, and those tailored services to just really help you meet the compliance needs, manage your audits, and educate your employees on evolving security risks while protecting your sensitive data. That's all we have for now, but we have it open for Q&A. We have a few minutes to go over here. We're seeing the inbox is really busy, actually. So I have a couple of questions in the Q&A section, and I have one here, Paul. And Paul, I'm going to start with this, but I think I already know what you're going to say, but please jump in after me. Where I have a question: what platforms are the safest? And I'm going to say that platforms, they're not built with security in mind. For Office 365 and Google, there are default security precautions and protocols built in, and they're good at stopping low-level spam, but that's where they stop. They're not providing that same level of data protection and filtering that we provide here at LevelBlue and with Checkpoint. Paul, do you want to elaborate that at all?
No, honestly, it's a great question, and I feel like businesses kind of, they go around, they're vetting. Do I go with Microsoft? Do I go with Google Workspace? And then it goes beyond this document or unified communication conversation. Well, what security do you provide me? And it's like those organizations really started. Take that back. Google started more as a search engine, and now they've moved into more of the unified communications approach, right? But Microsoft, it's been what they've done for many, many years. Document management, all those things. But security was always a second thought. What we do here at Checkpoint and LevelBlue is essentially we are security. That is it. When we plug into those platforms, we make them secure platforms, right? They will have certain aspects of certain licenses that can boost their protections. But again, as I mentioned earlier, plug us in, let us sit there in that silent mode and show you the things that those tools are missing when it comes to phishing and malware and spam and those other different types of more sophisticated attacks. But the one thing that I always like to discuss from an email security standpoint is we get hyper-focused on blocking the malicious things, but there's also that false positive side. Like these other platforms out there, they get weird kind of backwards approach of overly secure with the things that should be delivered and then forget about the things that shouldn't be delivered. So it's kind of a backwards approach. And And that's where these more sophisticated solutions with what Harmony Email Collaboration is doing on a day-to-day basis. That's where we come into play and make sure that those happen.
Thank you for that. One other question here, and I think, Kristen, you might be able to shed some light on this. What are some of the methods that organizations should use to identify EEC attacks early on?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's just behavior-based. So with like educating employees and everything, like that only goes so far. One person's bound to fall for it. So just having the right stuff in place, like with this software and everything like that. So just following the right protocols and making sure the right rules are written so that it can detect, suspicious email activity, basically.
Got it. Thank you. Let's see. Carl Wilson asked, we use Intermedia Exchange email server, not Office 365 email. Is this available for our environment? Paul, do you know?
Carl, that's a great question. So we are currently focused on the cloud. However, if you guys are configured in what we call a hybrid deployment, so essentially you got 365 and your on-prem Exchange kind of working and talking together, and 365 is feeding things to your on-prem Exchange. Maybe you've got an app or a couple of users that are hyper-focused on staying on-prem. We can absolutely protect things that are living in 365, and then it kind of flows architecturally down to your on-prem ecosystem. But to answer your ultimate question, if you're hyper-focused and strategically set on-prem today, that's not something we touch on. But those hybrid deployments we can.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. Here's another question. So, Kristen, you might want to jump in here after I say my spiel. How does LevelBlue grow and adapt to new threats? So something that I've touched on, and so as Kristen, is we are constantly sifting through a ton of threat intelligence. We are staying, just finger on the pulse on the threat landscape, just constantly writing new rules, finding out information about various threat actors and groups. And we are working around the clock to stay apprised of the situation and just grow a massive wealth of data. And we turn that data into actionable insights so that we can translate them to Checkpoint or some of our other services. So then those filters come into play, and maybe a new URL or email address will pop up that's unknown to your organization, but we've already identified that as malicious. So it's something that we can just flag right away and block it. Kristen, anything to add there?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Having your finger on the pulse is huge. So we have our labs team, and they're, like Alex said, continuing to always develop, create different rules. But even bigger than that, with our SOC and everything, we are constantly seeing these incidents come in, and then, we take care of them. But the biggest thing too is learning from that and then developing our platform further to do better the next time or catch something else or something new that came on. And so we also train our SOC with that. So we have our after action reports and everything, and we'll go over in team meetings, oh, hey, this is what this looks like now. This is how we're going to approach it this way. So just that kind of, proactive and reactive is a really big part of it, because there's always going to be attackers that are, developing and going further. That's why the human aspect of things is so important. We can't just rely on AI for, remediation. We need the humans to also adapt and learn and go further and take care of those gray areas. So that's just a really big part of it. But just the continuous learning, I mean, that's one of the biggest parts of cybersecurity is the learning aspect, and that's what we enjoy. So that never stops. And I think that's definitely helping us with all of this.
Very true. Thank you, Kristen. We have another question here. What benefits does LevelBlue provide beyond deploying Checkpoint as a self-managed tool? So it's actually not self-managed. We are fully managing this service for you. It comes and lives quietly in your environment. We are pushing updates to it. We're updating that threat intelligence. We're managing policy based on, what your organization's needs are. We like your second question here, Kyle, do we proactively block new threats for our customers? Yes, we are actively pushing security updates based on our threat intelligence to make sure that you remain protected and your environment remains secure. Let's see, I think we might have time for one more question here. I saw one pop up.
Can I say with the proactive one real quick?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
That's one of the biggest parts too. Like that's the whole goal, is to get it before it happens, right? So just creating those rules in order to be proactive instead of reactive of, oh, hey, this incident happened. Maybe something was compromised. Let's see how we can remediate it. It's no, let's make sure it doesn't happen. They tried and they failed because we blocked it. So that's probably one of our biggest focuses.
That's a great point, Kristen. Yeah, we are not reactive, like you said. After an incident happens or there's some type of bug, we're not waiting for patches to occur. We are actively going in and checking things out and putting those proactive rules in place to protect you. We actually are out of time for today, but I really want to thank everyone for joining today and, getting involved, asking some questions. If you do have other questions, leave them in the chat. Someone will get back to you. We have a few great resources. We're happy to set up demos and talk further. This is a great platform that Check Point has. And, we are just thrilled to be able to manage it and provide that managed services for you with that added threat intelligence layer that is proactive, as Kristen mentioned. So thank you again, everyone, for joining. Have a great rest of your day.